Hello, guys. Welcome back to the MMA Sucka podcast. My name's Frazer Krohn, and we have got a very good card from Abu Dhabi to break down for you. Wonder if Dana White's going to complain about this one because he complained about the amount of decisions that happened at UFC 304. Yes, this isn't a pay-per-view, or wasn't a pay-per-view, I should say, but we only got four finishes. Um, I wouldn't say any of them were anything to sort of really reap home about. They were good finishes. They were fine. The finishes on the card, especially uh, one of them in particular was fine. But I'll go into that. I'm not going to talk about the whole card because overall, I think the card was good, but it was long. But I do want to talk about sort of the main card in particular. Um, I thought Jai Herbert put in a really good fight on the undercard. Victoria Dudikova lost for the first time in her career. I've always been high. On Victoria Dudikova, 2-0 in the UFC. Obviously, the first fight came as a result of an injury. Second fight was a unanimous decision against Ji Young Frey. And she was just outworked by Sam Hughes. She was taken down three times. She had massive cardio issues. And I think that is going to be the biggest learning curve for her going forward, is that she needs to improve that cardio. If the output's going to be there, like it was in the first round, I believe, let me just double check. Um, yeah, the output was there in the first round, 79 strikes thrown. Then it dropped to 65, and then it dropped again to 55. You compare that to Sam Hughes. Sam Hughes threw 80 in the first round, 96 thrown in the second round, and 64 in that final round. Really good win for Sam Hughes, who snaps the losing skid. Sorry, no, who does rebound from the loss, but for me, Victoria Dudikova is going to learn a lot from that. She's still young. I think she's only 21 years of age. Victoria Dudikova, born in 25 um, years of age. She's going to learn a lot from that. Shamil Gaziev was boring. I'll say it, boring. Really uninspiring fight. 11 minutes 58 of control time against Dontel Myers. This is a guy who entered the UFC with a lot of hype and hasn't lived up to it, in my opinion. Yes, he won one. He then lost one, retired on his stool, and then he's won one again, but in a boring fashion. Um, One of the fights of the night for me was Guram Kutateladze facing the late notice newcomer to the promotion, Jordan Vucenic. Vucenic. Um, Vucenic landed that he knocked Kutateladze down in the first round. I thought it was a really good outing, 29-28 on all scorecards for Kutateladze, but Jordan Vucenic is not going to face many tougher guys, probably in the UFC, um, especially not on his debut, than Guram Kutateladze. Uh, it's a really good performance by Vucenic. Disappointing for him that he wasn't able to get the win. He was just outworked in that sort of final round. Full camp would have certainly benefited him, but it is what it is. It's a really, like I say, it's a really good first outing for Vucenic, and I just want to give props to Kutateladze after a tough first round. He's come back, he's done really well, and that when he's that sequence where he looked like he was going to be shook off the top of Vucenic to push off the cage to take the back was really nice. Um, Joel Alvarez and Azmat Murazakhanov get big finishes. Joel Alvarez, in particular, keeping the judges out of it with a big knockout. Then we move on to the main card, Mackenzie Dern versus Lupi Godinez. I scored the fight 2-1 for Dern, the same as all of the judges. I think we showed vast improvements. If you're a Mackenzie Dern fan, I think we saw really big improvements. She was much sharper on the feet than she's shown previously. Whether it's because she linked back up with Jason Perillo, I'm not so sure. She got herself in really good shape for this fight, so she could throw hard for all three rounds. Um, you know, Again, this slightly waning in output, but not terrible. Lupi Godinez was certainly looking to pick her shots much better. She threw 152 total strikes. Mackenzie Dern threw 235 total strikes. So Dern was certainly the more active fighter in that one. Um, Mackenzie Dern, she was looking to be spiteful with a jab, which is something that I thought was particularly interesting. That she was actually throwing the jab to land and to hurt rather than throwing the jab just out there as a rangefinder. And she was stepping through with her shots. She's still got massive problems on the feet. Don't get me wrong. She's still got huge problems on the feet. She backs up with her chin very high up in the air still, and she's still very vulnerable off the break, whether it be a clinch or when she's getting up from a takedown. Very vulnerable. That's something that Perillo and Dern herself have got to work on. Get your hands up when when you're backing up, back up with your chin down because she does a lot of the basics. Well, she did, I should say, a lot of the basics fairly well. She managed to mix in the wrestling. She was very good, as we saw in that first round with that sub attempt. Sorry, the second round. Was it the first round? I think the sub attempt was in the first round for the armbar. She was very good at that. She managed distance very well. She didn't take a whole lot of damaging shots, but someone that's a little bit taller than Lupi Godinez, a little bit better on the feet. Let's not forget, Godinez is essentially a wrestler. Her sister's competing in I think well, she's competing in the Olympics, her sister in freestyle wrestling. Let's not forget that she is essentially a wrestler. So someone a little bit more wily on the feet could probably do a bit better against Mackenzie Dern. But like I said, it's not the end of the world. I think it was a really good win for Mackenzie Dern. To snap that two-fight losing streak was vital because if you're losing three in a row in a tough division like strawweight, it's not a good sign. What's next for Mackenzie Dern? It's difficult because there's people ranked above her that I think are a lot better than her, as ridiculous as it sounds. She's not getting a title shot against Zhang Weili. Zhang Weili is probably going to fight Jandiroba next. You got Amanda Lemos, she just lost to her. You got Tatiana Suarez. Now that makes for an entertaining fight, in my opinion. Tatiana Suarez is obviously going to look to take every opponent that she faces down, but you don't want to take Dern down. So that, do we get two sort of grapplers have a kickboxing match in that one, which I think Mackenzie Dern, could potentially do quite well in. She's just beaten Lupi Godinez, and then the next girl, sort of lower than Dern in the rankings, if she chooses to fight down, Karolina Kovacevic, who hasn't got a fight, that is. Karolina Kovacevic, not for me. I think the Tatiana Suarez fight is the one to try and make, unless she tries to rematch Amanda Lemos, but I think that one came too recently for me. But like I said, great for Dern to get back in the win column. Good win, good solid win. So I'm happy for her in that one. Someone that did get back in the win column was Michael Chiesa. Someone that didn't get back in the win column was Tony Ferguson. This was a tough watch. Tony Ferguson now breaks the record for UFC losses on the bounce with 8 consecutive losses. But now, you know, he's not just losing fights. He got knocked out by Justin Gaethje. He lost to Charles Oliveira by decision. He lost to Beneil Dariush by decision. He got knocked out by Michael Chandler. He got submitted by Nate Diaz, submitted by Bobby Green, lost to Paddy Pimblett by decision. Now he's getting submitted by Chiesa. He tried to go, he's gone lightweight, up at welterweight, back down to lightweight, back down to lightweight again, now back up at welterweight. I think Dana needs to do the right thing and cut Tony Ferguson from the UFC for his own good. 8 consecutive losses, 8 losses now on the bounce. And I tweeted, let me just pull up a tweet that I made because I thought it was obviously I thought it was a good thing to say because I'm the one that tweeted it. But I just put there's next to no emotion watching Tony Ferguson lose anymore because I just don't feel like he believes in it himself. I don't believe that Tony Ferguson believes that he's going into any of these fights with the potential of actually winning the fight, which is a really sad, sort of depressing thing to think about. That self-belief just isn't there for me for Tony Ferguson. Michael Chiesa he beat him in the as ridiculous as it sounds, he beat him in the nicest way possible. He took him down. He easily got to the back and locked in a submission. An old Tony Ferguson would have would have probably gone out. He would have probably allowed Michael Chiesa to choke him out cold, and Tony tapped it. For me, like I say, there's no ambition for Tony Ferguson to really get that win back, and I'm sure there is. You know, he said he sparred 120 rounds prior to this fight. I'm not sure if that showed in the fight. I don't think that made any difference to the fight itself. Um, if Michael Chiesa gets back in the win column, for me, Michael Chiesa is way, way, way off the sort of upper echelons of the division. He's still, for me, way off a ranking. 36 years old. I mean, just pull up the UFC rankings. Um, I can't, I can't see him being anywhere near the top 15 at the moment, let alone welterweight. You look at the top 15. Kevin Holland beats him. Michael Page probably beats him. Vicente Luque has already beat him. Magny, that maybe. I mean, maybe that's a rematch that we could potentially see. But the guys that aren't ranked in the top 15, Michael Page, Joaquin Buckley, Wonder Boy, and then you're looking at the likes of Ian Gary and then the top five. Chiesa, who's next for Chiesa? I know it sounds ridiculous. I don't really care. I don't have an awful lot. He's going to have to fight down because, the guys in the top of the division. Sorry about that. I don't know where I am now, so I'm just going to move on. Devison Figueiredo does really well against Marlon Vera. Becomes the first person to ever drop Marlon Vera, despite being a man who's coming down. Going up in weight. Still, let's not pretend he's still the smaller fighter. He was definitely the smaller fighter in there. Marlon Vera, as they were saying on commentary, as we've always said, is a slow starter, and we can't afford to do that, especially not in a 3-round fight. I think he let the fight get away from him slightly. Devison Figueiredo really mixed it up well. I think the fact that he landed the takedown in the first round and was able to sort of control Vera and stop Vera from doing an awful lot on the floor in that first round really killed the fight for Marlon Vera because he was very conscious and of that takedown. He was biting on a lot of the feints of Devison Figueiredo and he's doing biting big on those feints. Um, yes, Figueiredo only landed 2 of 14 takedowns, but it was the threat of the takedown. It's a constant defending of the takedown. The Marlon Vera is having to really work hard doing, defending. And I think that really sort of was playing on his mind somewhat. And yeah, I do think it really did sort of kill the fight. It was a really good performance by Devison Figueiredo. For me, I don't think he gets a title shot next because I think the man who I'll go on to talk about in a minute in the main event probably gets the next one. Petr Yan. Run Petr Yan versus Devison Figueiredo. 5-round main event, fight night main event. I'm excited to see that. I really want that fight to happen because Petr Yan did get back in the win column. I think we'd see a really good competitive fight in that one. That's the fight to make without a shadow of doubt. Co-main event, Mikhail Olendzejczuk loses a 3-round pretty dominant decision to Shara Magomedov. 30-27, 30-27, and 29-28. Again, I put a tweet which I'm pretty proud of, but um, but again, that's why I tweeted it. I put Shara Bullet is good, but just good at the moment. I'm not completely convinced by him yet, and unfortunately, that's the truth. I didn't. He entered the UFC with a lot of hype. He's now gone to a decision twice, one of which is a fight of the night. You don't get a fight of the night for absolute dominance. He didn't get the finish in his last fight until the third round against a guy who had been out of action since 2021, I believe. Sorry, since 2019, who took the fight on short notice. He's good, Shara Magomedov. He's good, but he's taken down very, very easily, in my opinion. Olendzejczuk landed 3 takedowns of 7, but when he's down, he's also controlled. Bruno Silva landed 3 takedowns of 7. Um, He's good. He's very good. He's very precise with his shots, and he's still young. I think he's 30 years old, so he's not very old in the grand scheme of MMA. He's on the brink of a ranking. 3-0 in the UFC now. You look at guys who are ranked at middleweight, or at least on the edge of a ranking. I think a fight between Shara Bullet and Christian Leroy Duncan would be phenomenal. Christian Leroy Duncan was controlled on the floor in his last one, as was Shara Bullet. I think those two match really well at middleweight. A fight between Nurmagomedov and RoboCop is the fight to make for me because RoboCop can take him down, he can control him on the floor, but he can also stand and bang with him. He'll ask questions of Nurmagomedov that I don't think he's been asked before. That's an exciting prospect for me. Like I said, he's good, but that's all he is at the moment. He's good. Someone who is a lot more than good and a lot more impressive and won the fight a lot easier than I thought he would was Umar Nurmagomedov. 50-45, 49-46, and 49-46 over Cory Sandhagen, one of the best bantamweights in the division. Admittedly, the nearly guy in the division, if you remember, Cory Sandhagen had a title eliminator against Aljamain Sterling, lost that in just over a minute. He then put two really good wins together, then lost to TJ Dillashaw. He's now put three good wins together and then loses to Umar Nurmagomedov. With that being said, 18-0 Umar Nurmagomedov now. 6-0 in the UFC, 18-0. And there were still questions about him going into the fight. You know, you look at the guys that he's faced, Brian Kelleher, um, an aging older Ronnie Barsoles. He took on Al Khan. Forgive me for the pronunciation, as long-term listeners of the show know, I'm awful at pronunciation. Um, Last time out, that was a late notice fight for his opponent. But then you look at that fight and he landed 68 significant strikes to three of his opponent. But that's not about that fight. This is about this fight. He was dominant from pretty much minute one to minute 25. Yes, it did go to a decision. He mixed in the takedowns. Cory Sandhagen's takedown defense, as we become accustomed to, was pretty good in this one, but not where it needed to be. He was taken down, Cory Sandhagen, just looking now. They, he was taken down in every round. But it wasn't just the takedowns that Cory Sandhagen was struggling with. He didn't do an awful lot, Cory Sandhagen, for me, to try and win the fight. He was almost mesmerized and a little bit cautious of Umar. Um, and that's what allowed Umar Nurmagomedov to do so well in that fight. He was constantly mixing it up. He wasn't biting on feints. He was putting together nice one shots and combinations throughout. And he was just a better all-round mixed martial artist. He dominated where the fight took place. Like I said, the threat of the takedown's constantly there. Um, Good scrambles throughout the fight as well. He was able to control Cory Sandhagen for large periods of the fight, and Cory Sandhagen did something that we're not really accustomed to seeing him do. And was kind of mesmerized by Umar, which is, like I said, we're not accustomed to seeing that. It was quite surprising. Um, and he will be next for the winner of Merab versus Sean O'Malley. Regardless of who wins that fight, I think Umar is a really, really good matchup for either of those men. He could progress to 19-0 and hold a belt at bantamweight. Whether that happens, there's a lot of different, eventualities to that. But we have to consider that as a potential because, like Dana White kind of hinted that he will be next. That is like I say, regardless of whether it's O'Malley or whether it's Merab, it's a phenomenal fight. And it's because of Umar Nurmagomedov. The things that he does well, he does really well. The things that he doesn't do so well, he still does really well. He's got that Nurmagomedov name to him, which means that inevitably he can wrestle. But let's not, get caught up on that, should we say? He he is a striker at heart. And we go from what was a really good card in Abu Dhabi to, I'm going to say it, the worst card of the year. People who enjoy this podcast are lucky that UFC 305 is on a week after next because it means that I will do a podcast next week looking at UFC 305 rather than looking back at this card. On paper, it's a terrible, terrible card. Let's hope that it doesn't play out like that, but it is what it is. It's not a good card. You've got Yusuf Zalal on the card that's a highlight. Uh, the hard hitting Jonathan Deniz on the card, undefeated Danny Barlow on the card. I mean, it's a really poor card. You know, you've got a five-fight main card featuring Yana Santos versus Chelsea Chandler. Now, Chelsea Chandler, for those of you that don't know, is one of the worst UFC fighters on the roster. She's ranked at bantamweight, having never won a fight at bantamweight. She won her first fight at catchweight. She then lost to Nora Dumont at featherweight. She did win a fight at 135 kilos. It was contracted for 135 kilos. Chandler came in at 137. That was her last fight. She now faces Yana Santos, formerly Yana Kunitskaya, who is without a win since Ketlin Vieira in February of 2021. Yes, she had a baby in that time, I believe. But she lost to Irene Aldana, lost to Holly Holm, and lost to Cal Rosa last time out. Damon Jackson's on the card. Yeah, the co-main event is Javid Barshat versus Chris Gutierrez. Barshat looking to rebound from his first ever professional loss last time out as he takes on the man who I think had a lot of potential in Chris Gutierrez when he beat Frankie Edgar. He then lost to Pedro Munoz, and he's gone 1-1 since losing to um, Song Yadong last time out. And then we've got the heavyweight main event rematch that absolutely nobody on the planet asked for. I don't know why this is happening. I don't think anyone cares. I don't think they've. If you knew that these two guys fought before, fair play, because I didn't. I don't remember their first fight. It's Sergey Spivak and Marcin Tybura. Their first fought in February of 2020, where Marcin Tybura handed Sergey Spivak a loss. Since then, after that fight, Spivak has gone 6-2, losing to only Tom Aspinall and Cyril Gane. And Tybura has gone 7-2, losing to Tom Aspinall and Alexander Volkov. It's in the Apex. It's a fight that, I'll be honest, I'd be surprised to see anybody get up for, because the fight is boring. The fight is not going to live up to. It's not going to be a barn burner. Nobody cares about the fight, so I don't know why it's happening. We have got a Invicta card this week. Invicta back doing more regular shows, headlined by Jennifer Meyer, former Invicta FC champion, I believe, former UFC title challenger. She takes on Mayra Cantuaria, Brazilian and a Brazilian girl. I butchered the pronunciation of that, as per usual. We've got a couple of other fights on there. Kate Basic, Queen of the South, UK fighter out of GB Top Team, looking to extend her winning streak to 5 in a row as she takes on Paula Christina. That's pretty much it on the Invicta card to keep an eye out for. But it's full steam ahead now to Australia. We've got the PFL in a couple of weeks as well to look at, but it's full steam ahead to Australia. Save yourself. Don't bother watching the UFC this weekend. The card's god awful, and they keep on serving us these god awful cards after bangers like we had in Abu Dhabi. I will be doing a podcast next week because it's full steam ahead, like I said, to UFC 305, Adesanya versus Duplessis. The card's all right. The card's not bad, but I'll talk about that on next week's episode, and I'll break down what I hope is going to be a nice surprise, but I really doubt that the card is going to be good in the Apex. Thanks for listening, guys. Like and subscribe and all that good stuff, and I'll catch you next time.